dear Dr. Janne Kontala, Jayananda Prabhu. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
We're so happy to do this interview with you. We'd like to know a little about your background, experiences in yoga, research, and also your experience in Hungary.
Yeah, looking forward to the discussion. So let's get started.
Wonderful. My first question is, how did your journey with yoga begin? And what first inspired you to take it up as a daily practice?
Yeah, so my background in sports is in the noble sport of table tennis. And my coach actually gave me a yoga book, like this might be helpful in a competitive setting. And I read it and I realized here's something which is interesting, because you can apply the sports idea about doing daily practice to existential questions, which is kind of yoga is combining both. And I got fascinated, and then some years I still did my sports training. At one point I came to a conclusion I won't get better no matter what. So then I suddenly had 2 extra hours every day, to put it mildly. And then, okay, I need to have an exercise. So I took up yoga and been doing it ever since. So I started with physical, like asana-based and breathing-based practice. And quite soon I discovered this is so great. I want to know all about it. I started incorporating other practices like meditation and studying the philosophy and the whole thing.
Fascinating. You've studied in both Indian and Western ashramas. How have these experiences shaped your understanding of yoga?
I can give a comparative perspective because that's not the only place where I studied. I also did like all sorts of things, like went to normal yoga schools and teacher trainings, and I explored pretty much. Would be exaggeration to say everything. Nobody knows everything, but I took many different perspectives, and I can say based on that ashram experience is interesting in the way that it becomes very tangible what it might mean to do that as a like full-time thing, rather than this is my private practice and this is my yoga practice and this is the rest of the life, which is something else. So in ashram context, these kind of distinctions don't really apply. Everything is somehow related to the same red thread, which is the spiritual orientation. So based on that experience, for me, kind of, if you read any traditional serious yoga text, Bhagavad Gita, Yoga Sutra, whatever it is, it's tangible that this should be basically something you do throughout your life and as much as possible all the time. But in ashram context, it becomes tangible. This is what's actually taking place. Then you know this is how it feels.
I assume it's also because everyone else is doing the same thing.
Yeah, everyone else is like, there's nothing extraordinary about it. It's rather that if somebody is in ashram and is only doing it 3 hours a day, then it's kind of, hey, what's wrong with you? Yeah, so it's social, it's a lifestyle, stuff like that. That said, I also want to emphasize that I'm happy that I eventually came out from that context, because there's something to be said about each individual's personal proclivities, and there are some things you cannot, or at least I felt I couldn't do, which I'm doing now. Just like integrating it into professional life and family and all that.
And also your research. Can you tell us about your academic research at Åbo University?
Yeah. So I started my religious studies. I mean, essentially I entered university at the same time when I started with yoga practice in the beginning of 90s. Then I spent some years in ashram environment where I wasn't doing any academic work. But then I took it up again. And religious studies, then my first interest was texts, ancient texts, and that was my focus. And I was thinking that this is probably what I will be doing ever since. Then I finished my master's, had a few years when I wasn't doing any academic. I was basically a full-time yoga teacher. Then there was a research opportunity I made an application. A yoga student of mine actually hinted that you might want to try out how it feels to fill in an application. Okay, then okay, why not? Like, let's try something new. And I was recruited based on that. But it was fascinating because there were very different approaches. It was like sociology of contemporary worldviews rather than ancient tradition rooted in Hinduism. So anyway, that opened a totally different approach to what it means to study not only religions but worldviews in more general, because I chose to focus on non-religion. So people who are actively opposing the visible role of religion in the society, in this case in Finland. So so up to that point, my main engagement with religion and spirituality was like, this is what I'm doing as a personal practice, and then I'm sharing with others in the role of a teacher. But like the whole field of being actively opposed to that, I didn't know much about that. And so when I got to choose what I would focus on, I mean, the project funding was already like set, and there were a couple of options like environmental movement and conservative Christianity and then non-religion. Then I picked up that because I thought, of all these three, I know absolutely nothing about it, and I'm curious. So that's how it started. Then I spent a few years with that, and then it kind of grew. I finished my PhD, and then there was another research project, and now another one. So like that.
And how do you see this research connecting to yoga philosophy and meditation?
Yeah, it's the famous example, which is also used by some like well-known propagators of yoga and spirituality. Is like you have a jar of honey, and then there's like the text. These are the ingredients, and this is where it's like collected from, and you can have some expectation based on reading the ingredients, but it's not quite the same as opening it and putting it in your mouth. I mean, one way of applying this example is, I think, is obvious, that wouldn't everyone just want to, taste it rather than just analyzing the ingredients? However, I think we can add a caveat that sometimes you really need to read and want to read first before you decide, do I want to taste this? Maybe not really, because some of the ingredients, maybe, let's say they are nuts and you have nut allergy. Then it might be like a matter of life and death. You definitely don't want to taste something which includes nuts in that case. So I think academic study of religions and worldviews can provide the kind of information that can be really useful for somebody to find out before making a commitment. Then the other one is related to pluralism. Let's face it, the world is globalized. There are many faith traditions, and many of them are like totally unknown to us. So we interact with people, and I think it's useful to try to understand what is going on in the others' lives and not take it as a default assumption. Whatever is my tradition, that defines the world. So I find the academic study to provide a good platform to explore, because you cannot be committed to 10 different traditions. That's impossible. But at least to get some familiarity, I think you can save a lot of time. Somebody else already did the research, and now you can kind of read it in a couple of days rather than spending 10 years on it.
Very interesting. Very interesting. You've been training yoga teachers since 2005, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
What key principles guide your teaching approach?
The first point is to approach the student as an individual. So I would rather have like a tailor-made program for each candidate. Now, that may not practically be possible. Let's say it's a group format and a systematized training, which has its virtues. It's a good way of making it financially feasible and logistically possible so that people can actually participate and take their time. And then the teacher in a group format can actually address the needs of many people rather than addressing each and everyone individually. But that said, everyone is actually an individual. And for me, the ideal scenario is that if somebody is really serious, then there can be a forum kind of outside of the official context where you can start addressing the individual questions that the person might have. And in that, then that actually brings us back to, because yoga teacher trainings today, that's we may associate that's a latest fad in, yoga industry and not really traditional. But like that, I think sometimes you can actually get into this one-on-one interaction, which then brings us back in time 2,500, 3,000 years to the world of Upanishads, where student is trying to get answers to the existential questions, finally finds a teacher, and then they have this very deep personal conversation. And teacher might say, okay, this is the answer, and this is your practice, and get lost now. Come back after 1 year, explore it, and like that. If I can, that's my favorite. Very few people are into that though, so I'm doing both. I'm kind of doing systematic training. I love teaching, that's something I've been doing. I've been doing that. I mean, I remember with my brother when he was 12, helping him with math. My sister helping them to play piano. I remember I've been teaching people in all sorts of unusual and some of them usual like context. Training young people in table tennis, for instance. I've been doing that always. I love teaching. Nothing beats the feeling you try to communicate something and the person finally picks it up. Oh, this is how it works. I mean, those are the most rewarding moments in life. Now, when it's taking place in the context of yoga and spirituality, there's something special about it because it's like about the deepest possible questions. But at the same time, it's like teaching itself, sharing knowledge and communicating. I think it's just fun, gives me purpose in life.
Wonderful. And it's also the Upanishadic and Puranic method to have tailor-made approach to the teacher, student, disciple, so that every student can advance in their own pace.
Yeah, right. Rather than having this kind of institutional or industrial or bureaucratized approach that everyone is like, well, I agree everyone is equal, but at the same time everyone is unique. Both at the same time. We can appreciate everyone, but people are wildly different actually. But like what are they interested in and what are the strengths and what are the challenges, and then to kind of approach it that way. I think even today the idea of mentorship, it's not lost. It's like people who are successful in life,
yes.
They quite often turns out they have a mentor who is giving them individual support.
Yes. Often they say that their success is due to their mentors.
Yeah. I mean, what else is new? Why reinvent the wheel? Like, theoretically speaking, we could maybe theorize that it's possible to discover the answers to the perennial questions, if you will, on your own. But even if that's the case, you're likely to save a lot of time if you have the opportunity to have a conversation with somebody who already did all of that.
Yes.
So at the very least, it saves a lot of time. But then when we are talking about like going beyond the universe and all that, then it's becomes even more pressing that it's actually really good to have somebody who can guide.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. In your experience, how can philosophy be integrated into practical yoga and meditation training?
Well, how? So the first part of the answer, my experience, sometimes it's just not possible, because if nobody is interested, then what's the point of trying to integrate something which I didn't sign up for this? Like, I'm just thinking about, like, I taught yoga in so many different contexts, and some of it where the contextualization was like just focusing on physical exercise. That's the beginning and end of it. Let's say if it's
that's what they come for.
Yeah, if it's framed like that, let's say you go to the local swimming pool and there's a room where you can do stretching and like that. Would you like to have a yoga class here? Yeah, sure. But then people come in and nobody's like coming in with the question that I don't really know what happens after death, or then it's almost like this is not really the right forum for that. So to get started, that I think there are some like places where it's not appropriate at all. So philosophy and the deeper kind of spiritual aspect of yoga in that case would be a respectful silence, which I think is part of it actually, to respect the integrity of the other one and not force feed my truth to you because I know I'm right and you are wrong and you should, it's not really respectful and could be counterproductive actually. So first there has to be interest. Yes. But as soon as there is even a lingering interest, the first thing is like what I have encountered. People may have this idea about yoga philosophy. Yeah, that's the boring official part that we somehow anyway have to familiarize ourselves with because it's part of the tradition and so on, but I'm not really into that. But as soon as we open the door, hey, what are your individual interests? Like asking questions like, if you're the student, like, what would enrich your life right now? Like, do you have a pressing question? And then a person, everyone has that, but like I'm not expecting to get answers to that from a yoga teacher. But if people just knew the richness of the philosophical, theological, and, frankly, very rooted in life tradition that yoga has to offer, just consider Bhagavad Gita. It's on the battlefield, and the basic argument is Arjuna is asking, like, this is too stressful. He's indirectly indicating that it might be better to live a life of yoga because he's saying it would be better for me to live by begging. And in that particular context, if you know the context, it can only mean one thing. There's only one respectful way it could be interpreted for him, who is a member of a royal family. That would be living a life of wandering ascetic, like a yogic lifestyle in a traditional way. Krishna spends the rest of the 17th chapter saying, you are thinking that yoga and life are two distinct domains. You need to figure out how you can bring the yoga into the life, which is the setting. And so it's just, there are some historical coincidences why the text called Yoga Sutra came to be the defining philosophical framework for contemporary yoga. But there's a lot is missing if you only rely on that, because it's a meditational psychological text, which assumes that welcome to Patanjali's Yoga Sutra class after you have left your address and family and work and all other ambitions and hobbies behind. And now we can get started with the conversation. That's one part of the conversation. It's not all of it. And my feeling, most people just don't know how many tools and principles there are which you can apply in all kinds of situations. Those situations that we call life as it is. Now, when that is introduced, suddenly it's like, who doesn't have a life? And life tends to be defined by different challenges and problems with the good and bad and like that. What else is new? But who is not thinking about how will I survive to the next week and next month and like that? And it turns out that yoga tradition actually addresses all of those topics all the time when you give them hearing. So my discovery is like when you can actually get it to that kind of conversation. Like, let's figure out how the principles of yoga might work outside of the narrowly defined context of your personal yoga space and time, which might be like 1 hour out of the 24 hours. We start a conversation about what do you do the rest of the 23 hours, and turns out yoga is applicable in all of it if you want. Then it becomes interesting.
Fantastic. Wonderful. You mentioned Yoga Sutra. You have a commentary on Yoga Sutra, and you also have another book called Inner Yoga. Both explore the inner dimensions of practice. What core message do you hope readers take away from them?
Well, the Inner Yoga, that's a practical book. It's actually teaching exercises. But my idea in authoring that was originally, people were asking me many years, can you recommend a book on yoga? And I realized that there are books which I could recommend in terms of this is how you do your practice, and there are books which explaining the philosophical framework, but I couldn't really find anyone where I would be satisfied with the combination, and then I ended up writing one where explaining the kind of familiar practices that anyone would be doing, but integrating them in a philosophical and theological framework of traditional yoga. Now, why is that important? This yoga is meant about teaching a new way of seeing and approaching things, like reprogramming the mind on the deepest level. Now, what does the mind do? One of the things it does is thinking. So bringing in the framework is not just some kind of another piece of dry theory. It's a yoga of thinking. And then when you bring that in to the actual practice that you do, the outcome will be different, because now it's not only on the surface, but it's also like transforming, bring in the mind from within. So it's now the same practice you might have been doing thousands of times. There's a different layer now because you are approaching it internally in a different way. So it's kind of speeding up the progress, if you will. So that's inner yoga. Then when I started doing systematic teacher trainings, from the beginning I integrated yoga philosophy, but that kind of grew organically into then presenting that in the form of a book. So I actually have commentary both to Yoga Sutra and Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita I find actually is the most important one, because that's originally spoken to people like us who actually are entangled with the society.
It's already published also?
Yeah, it's published, but it's not available in English, even less in Hungarian, so it's Finnish.
You did it in Finnish.
Yeah, same with Yoga Sutra. But I find Yoga Sutra, which is meant for full-time ascetics, that's useful for everyone in the sense that it explains how the mind works and what are the internal challenges. And what would be the purpose of pretty much any yoga practice or lifestyle principle analyzed from the perspective of what kind of inner transformation would be a desirable outcome and what would be the predominant obstacles. And in that sense, Yoga Sutra is actually useful, even though it's kind of written with a different kind of audience in mind. But everyone has a mind, and so in that sense it's relevant. So anyway, these are some perspectives.
Thank you. How did your connection with Bhaktivedanta College in Budapest begin?
Yeah, Bhaktivedanta College in Budapest wanted to develop cooperation in the framework of Erasmus, which is a European Union, amongst other things, an academic exchange program. And then I don't actually know the background how Bhaktivedanta College found out that there are some scholars of religion who have a yoga angle in Finland. But anyway, that's what happened. And then we established a contact. And I think that's how it started.
And here you are.
Yeah, here I am. It's fascinating for me because this is the only place where I have been where it's very easy to connect my two interests in life, which tend to be distinct: academic study of religion and also academic study of yoga. Taking a look at it from the outside, and then the insider perspective as a practitioner and teacher. But here, it's happening. I taught some yoga classes, but then I'm also teaching a purely academic humanities type historical overview of contemporary yoga.
How was your teaching experience here?
Oh, like I said, I love teaching, and I love teaching in Hungary. It's a very good experience. I taught this course previously once in an online setting. So compared to that, it's real fun to be in the same classroom with people. It's more interactive, and people are actually raising questions, nodding their head in agreement, or then raising the eyebrows. What did you just say? And you don't have that kind of connection in online environment. So it's real fun.
It's easier to connect.
Oh yeah. By the way, one of the dictionary meanings of the word yoga is to connect.
Yes.
So it's relevant in that way as well.
And finally, what message would you like to share with students and practitioners of Bhaktivedanta College?
People who are considering of becoming students, or maybe who are already...
We can do both. Students who are currently here, what would you feel you'd really want to say to them? And also people who are looking for studies, what would be interesting in Bhaktivedanta College? Why would it be beneficial for them?
So this is a wonderful venue of integrating academic approach to yoga with tangible, you also get to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And from both perspectives, let me approach it from academic perspective first. As a scholar of religion, every scholar of religion knows what it means to study a religion from the outside, because nobody can have possibly done all of them. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's the outsider perspective. That's valuable, but it's distinct from insider perspective. We started with this, but I come back to this point that I really think that these two perspectives can mutually nourish one another in an amazing way. So doesn't matter which side you're interested in as a student. Some students might be I want to have an academic degree, and by the way, I'm also interested in yoga. But compared to just reading it from the books, actually going to classes and learning to actually do it and interacting with others who are doing it, is just totally different. It's then compared to yoga practitioners, you can go to teach trainings and all that, but having that huge dose of theoretical knowledge, I mean that's the best case scenario. Cannot imagine any better. So I would just say, if you hate yoga, don't come here. But this is the wrong place. But other than that, yeah.
There's
Really.
also the aspect of bhakti yoga taught at the college. How would you connect your yoga interests to bhakti yoga?
Well, I have a tangible personal interest in bhakti yoga. Sometimes did this thought experiment. Let's say I go alone to an island. I only can take one thing with me. Okay, let's say toothbrush, clothes, but what else? If I only can bring with me one practice, which one would I not leave out? Then the one practice I would never leave is the Bhakti Yoga personal daily mantra meditation practice, japa practice. So I'm, however, happy that I never had to make that choice, because I find since early on, I've been doing both physical, like Hatha Yoga type of practice, and then the Bhakti type, which is heavily centered around sacred sound of mantra. I've been doing both pretty much on a daily basis for many decades now. So I see they both nourish one another, but if I had to choose, then the Bhakti practice would be the most important one for me, which I would never trade away. But I really hope I don't have to make that, because I feel like, the mind right now is the main tool. You're doing mantra meditation, trying to focus the mind. But the mind tends to reside in the physical body, right? Through the nervous system. That's the interface. Means anything that takes place, any chemical change, biochemical change in the body will influence the mind. Consequently, if you take care of the body with the tools of yoga, it tends to positively influence the state of the mind, which you are going to use when you're doing the meditation. And unlike any other physical exercise, I tried not all of them, but many, of the tools I've discovered, it seems like the physical practice of yoga are almost like a perfect match, like tailor-made to support a focused meditation. So that's how I find them both supporting one another. But in my personal system of values, the physical is in the supportive role and the bhakti practice is in the main role.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Is there anything you feel we've left out that would be important to talk about in this interview?
Oh, we could discuss so many things. Maybe I can, as a final note, what I'm doing right now, but I have to be careful not to get carried away. But one thing that we are doing right now in Finland is research on contemporary yoga. And we are trying to figure out, amongst other things, the worldviews that the practitioners have. So you can pick up a popular book on yoga or a classic text like Bhagavad Gita and Yoga Sutra. But based on that, I don't think anyone would seriously think that this will tell you anything about what the grassroots level, like normal practitioners, how do they view the world. But when it comes to yoga, like let's say if contemporary yoga was a religion, it would be amongst the largest ones in the world. We count hundreds of millions of practitioners today, like more than 400 million is the latest estimation, which is it's right after Buddhism in terms of size. But if you ask the question, so what are the beliefs? I mean, there's no officially agreed upon belief system even to get started the investigation with. You can just make educated guesses, this book, that book, but people are real people. I mean, the same studying religion, it's a different thing to say this is the official theology of Christianity compared to what the people actually answer to questions if you ask them. So that's what we are doing, but here compared to Christianity, Islam, where the theology already exists in contemporary yoga, it doesn't exist. So we are kind of trying to come from grassroots up and bring about the typology of prominent worldviews in yoga today. So anyway, that's what's going on today. I find it infinitely fascinating, and I better stop now because otherwise I will speak 2 more hours on it.
Thank you for sharing this. And if I'm correct, tomorrow there will be a Bhaktivedanta College conference. Well, you will be also speaking about this research?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's the plan. So that's a forum where I will then share the preliminary findings.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this discussion.
Köszönöm.